And as we think about the future of our business, it has to be, how do we better serve our customers? How do we give them what they're going to need to build the packaging of the future?
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. Today, I'm with Jaclyn Epstein, COO of the MICA Corporation. Jaclyn, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure, my pleasure. A little bit of a tough go to get us going in the morning, but here we are. So let's get it going.
We made it.
We did make it. It's the Made in America podcast, Jaclyn. So we start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
Well, we make water-based primers and coatings that provide adhesion, barrier, and other properties for flexible packaging applications. And my grandfather started the company in 1971 to bring water-based technology to an industry that was primarily using solvent-based products because he felt like it would be safer and more environmentally friendly to offer water-based products to the flexible packaging industry.
Ahead of his time when it comes to sustainability, environmentalism.
Quite ahead of his time, yeah.
That's great. So I think use like a mouthful of like what you guys do.
Sure, yeah.
So for folks who don't like maybe 100% understand what it is, could you break it down for like where you might see it and like
absolutely.
what it does?
Yeah. So if you think about a snack food package, for example, you may have never actually thought about how it's made, but it's made of quite a few layers that are there intentionally to keep the food fresh for longer. And our material is used to keep some of those layers together. Materials that wouldn't ordinarily like to stick together, our products make sure that those layers hold together for the life cycle of the whole package.
So when you're talking about like a package, we're talking about sort of like a bag of potato chips type package? So
potato chips, any type of snack food, some pet food packaging, anything, that would be made of like thin film, paper, foil.
That the food's actually in and touching. So as opposed to like, if you think about like my son's kind of obsessed with Oreos, right? You get the outside packaging and then there's packaging inside. But you're talking about the stuff that you sort of get the snack bags in, the individual wrap stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Anything flexible that you can move around. Yeah.
Got it. Mm-hmm. And so before what you guys did, it was all done with
solvent-based. Yes.
That doesn't seem like something you want touching your food.
So our products don't come into contact with the food usually. We do have some products that are increasingly more in contact with the food, but primarily they're buried within the structure. And so that, the materials that are touching the food, of course, and everything that goes into the bag needs to be, safe for that application. Yeah.
So your stuff is really like glue that helps sort of keep the layers together?
Yes, you could definitely call it glue. We do, but the industry calls them primers because it sort of primes the surface of the base film to adhere whatever. Sometimes it's like a melted resin that it's adhering. So it prepares the surface. It primes the surface like you would for painting a wall, for example.
Mm-hmm. And do you know, like, what was your grandfather doing before he started the business? Like, how did he sort of get into it?
Yeah, so he was a chemist and he was working for a chemical company. And he actually had this idea while he was working there, pitched it, and they weren't super interested in it. And so, he kind of started thinking about it on the side and then eventually went to, the company and said, I think I'm going to start something. And they, wished him well, and there he did. Yeah.
There he went. And now here we are.
And here we are. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So were you kind of like always looking forward to being in the business, like growing up? Is this something that you aspired to? Like, how did you?
It's interesting because it definitely was always in the back of my mind. It was probably always in the back of my dad's mind. But it was never pushed in any way. I started my career in communications. I worked for GE. I was definitely encouraged to go kind of find my own path. And then it wasn't until like 6 or so years into my career that I really craved, working both with my family and for MICA, which I, was super passionate about.
So what were you, when you went to GE, were you working in comms?
Yes. So I started my career in the CLDP Communications Leadership Development Program with GE. I worked in their corporate communications team and then worked on their Olympic communications team when they did the Olympic sponsorship. and public affairs. I ended up in DC with their public affairs team. And then I came back to Connecticut with the energy management team. GE is quite different now than it was when I was there. But it was, a world-class communications team, and I learned so much from my time there.
And so that's kind of interesting. So you're really kind of into like outside facing communications and really dealing with that. And then when you came back, was there a need for that at MICA? Or were you like, hey, I'm going to start something different? Like, how did you transition over?
Yeah. So when I first got to MICA, my job was to learn the business. At the end of that, the kind of thinking would be that I'd move into sales and marketing and communications, but they really wanted me to learn the business from the ground up so that I had a really clear sense of what was needed to make the business better. And so I spent the first 2 years at MICA working in our laboratory, doing QC and customer related work. I worked on our manufacturing floor, making product alongside our production team, worked in accounting, supply chain, and ended up in sales, and then have been in sales for the past 7 years until I took this job a couple months ago as COO.
Look at that, back in operations.
Exactly.
What was that sort of transition like from going from a, like, I don't know, at the time it was like a Fortune 5 company or whatever, right? And sort of doing global communications and dealing with like Olympic sponsorships. And then sort of all of a sudden you're like in a laboratory or on a production floor. Sort of must have been a jarring change.
Yeah, it was, but at the same time, I was really craving being closer to the product, and I was never that close to the product at GE. I was really passionate about the message that we were telling and the story we were telling. I believed in the company, but I really loved the ability at MICA to be super close to the customer challenge that we're solving. A lot of times our customers are working on, solving a critical challenge in their package that means a lot to the brand, that they're serving. And it's very cool to be able to know the people that we're influencing and the package that ultimately, we're helping to go into.
Yeah, that's such a great thing about a family business, and especially in manufacturing, is like you sort of get the two things that I always hear people talking about, which is one, you sort of really get to engage with the actual customer and the sort of the problem you're solving. You're not like 16 levels away dealing, sort of toiling away in your idea. You get to sort of see it, all the way to fruition. And the second thing is you get to actually make something tangible. It seems like you've latched onto both of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the other benefits of working kind of around the business is that, as we make decisions, like I know how it's going to feel and impact the teams around the company. I felt their pain points along with them, asked a lot of like, why do we do it this way kind of questions, or have you thought about, doing it some other way? And I didn't, there's a lot that I don't know. I'm not a chemist. So I really rely on the team for a lot of, what makes our products work and how to help the customers.
Yeah, that's cool. So, do you feel like customer focus and that attention's really something that the company's always had, something that you've brought is a focus? Like, because you've said it a number of times about this idea of like really focusing on the customer outcomes. Like, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the customer has always been at the center of everything we do. We have core values as a company that, we've formalized since I've joined, but it's always been part of the culture. It was just kind of naming it. Customer focus, continuous improvement, and helping each other thrive are our three. And, we're always thinking customers and quality are really what you find us talking about mostly. And our customers are how we keep the lights on. I mean, that's really, it has to be the focus.
Right.
And as we think about the future of our business, it has to be, how do we better serve our customers? How do we give them what they're going to need to build the packaging of the future?
When you think about, you talked about sort of the culture, moving it from something that's innate to something on paper, so you could sort of talk about it. And now maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but it's, I think, right, sometimes there's the problem of it's on the paper, but it doesn't exist. And it's much better to take what exists, right, and document it, I think.
Yeah.
And so just talk about that journey about how do you said, hey, let me look at, this is so important. How did you get it documented? And then how do you continue to build on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it felt important to document it as we kind of I felt myself talking a lot about across the teams, we have to focus on the customer and always kind of expecting everybody to be in this place of customer service. So, and I think that it's really about evolving this company into, my dad likes to joke like, oh, we're a real company now. Like, we've really embraced the fact that we have this entrepreneurial culture and that we've kind of like figured our way out through a lot of stuff. But one of the influences I think I've had coming from GE is just seeing the benefits of like all working off of the same playbook and talking a lot about, everybody's in customer service and everybody, should be focusing on how we improve professionally and continuously improving. And then, just in terms of how we hire, like looking for somebody who's going to, embody these core values along with us. It's just helped to have them as sort of a guiding set of values for everybody.
Did you find any sort of resistance to form? Because, I think there's always that tension. Sometimes people go, oh, we have an entrepreneurial spirit, which sometimes means we're just disorganized and like to run by the seat of our pants, which is sometimes what entrepreneurs do. So fair enough. But it's really great to be able to sort of harness the power, just like you're talking about. But sometimes there can be resistance to that formalization. How did you find that as you were trying to make that?
I think there's a lot of trust in me that I'm not going to overdo it with pushing too much process or too much rigor. I mean, we still want to be able to have fun and kind of pivot as we want to. But, we're in the manufacturing industry. Like we're very process driven. So I don't think it's super unfamiliar to us to need to be, paying attention to process and documentation and things like that.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think like that's something I've certainly, that I certainly see all the time from a manufacturing perspective, as opposed to say when you're talking about a professional service business. Like in manufacturing, people are so used to, process and following a process and getting to a defined outcome. And you even talked about sort of being in QA and QC. Like that's a normal part of the manufacturing business. So taking sort of culture and documenting it probably feels more natural there than it might in some other places.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a easier transition getting everybody, to be okay with documenting this kind of stuff than you might think. Yeah.
Just kind of circling back to one of the things we talked about earlier on was about your grandfather sort of thinking about there's a better, more environmentally like friendly way. And it seems like it was kind of early to the game on that. Has that sort of trend of environmentalism, and I think what we could probably call it sustainability now, is that something that's still a part of MICA?
Yeah, absolutely. We like to say it's like in our DNA as a company. We have always believed that water-based is the way to go. We exclusively offer water-based products, and we're helping the industry to embrace new sustainable technologies. So, we go into plastic packaging, we're garbage. I mean, we literally, our product goes in the trash at the end of its life.
So pretty much everything you guys make is designed to be single use?
Exactly. And so, the whole industry right now is figuring out, where do we go from here? How do we make packaging that's recyclable, repulpable, or compostable? And our products are geared towards helping to do that. Our products are designed to adhere to new types of biopolymers, bioplastics, paper, materials that you can easily compost or industrially, or in the future, in your backyard, or hopefully marine compostable. But the industry is going through a big transition right now, and we're really interested in being part of the solution.
So talk a little bit more about that. Like, let's just kind of frame up the challenge. So, I mean, obviously anything that's single use poses a garbage challenge. And we're having this conversation in Connecticut. Anyone who's read about here, we're like running out of landfill space. So we truck our garbage other places. I know we've sent a lot of recycling stuff to China in the past and other places, which don't end up recycling it. Yeah. So is that what we're talking about? Sort of frame up the challenge of the single use a little bit differently. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so we talk a lot about this at MICA. And so, for example, where we are at MICA in Shelton, Connecticut, our trash goes to the Wheelabrator, to the waste to energy facility. And we actually took our employees on a tour of the Wheelabrator to kind of learn about the waste to energy solution. And, I think part of the issue in our country is that we're just it is a very local problem. Okay, so garbage. The infrastructure is set up so differently, and it should be kind of tailored to the community. If you're in rural, wherever in the U.S., it may not make sense for like a recycling truck to drive all the way out to pick up your newspaper that you put out there and reuse it. I mean, so it really, the solutions need to be, it's very challenging because it's an infrastructure problem. It's a local, situation. And then meanwhile, a packaging company needs to make one type of package to package the goods, right? So there's some interesting solutions being created out there. I mean, you'll start to see like store drop-off recycling, which is an interesting take. You'll see
store drop-off
recycling. You'll see on some packages like a How to Recycle logo. And actually, if you go into the grocery store, you might notice there's a receptacle that has the same logo. And certain goods you can clean off and bring back to the store when you go buy new goods and drop it in there, and then it gets recycled and made into different things. Like I know like Trex Decking makes decking material out of that. Really? Some of those store drop-off materials. And yeah, so there's some interesting things already in practice. Where we go from here is kind of what we're working on.
Yeah, and I know you're not an expert on trash to energy, but you brought it up, and I was actually really curious.
Yeah.
You took a tour. What did you learn? Like what? Because I mean, don't they just burn the garbage? Is that what they do?
And then they sell it for electricity.
So when you think about what MICA's in, what do you see as the biggest challenges to making this single-use packaging more environmentally friendly? Like, I mean, you mentioned recycling it. I mean, again, coming from a layman, it almost seems like, how could you even recycle it? There doesn't seem to be that much there,
Well, when you think about a paper package, for example, it's being able to repulp the paper into, paper.
Yeah, fresh paper pulp. Sure, yeah. Which must be difficult though, right? Because when the paper that we get that we use in packaging, by the time we get it, it's got your primer on it. It's got some coloring and dyes on it.
Exactly. These are the challenges that we're all working together to solve.
Oh, look, I'm learning something.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, our product definitely or anything we're offering into the final package, it needs to, cooperate with whatever the end of life plan is, whether it's compostability, repulpability, recyclability.
Got it. So that's the point, is trying to understand where is it going to go in the end, so that your product can. So if they're trying to break it up into its component parts, how can they break up your primer to be part of that?
Or in the case of, for example, we're in some hot cups, like a coffee cup that they'd give you at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, whatever. So our product, one of our customers decided they were going to make a fully compostable hot cup, which I don't know if you know this, but those cups you have to actually throw in the trash. They're not recyclable. They're not compostable today.
Okay.
It's paper coated mostly with poly, and our product as well to help with the sealing around the outside.
Right.
And so this customer decided they wanted to make a fully compostable cup. And so they swapped the poly for a industrially compostable resin. And then we developed a fully compostable, inherently compostable primer. So every component of that cup, paper obviously compostable, every component of the cup ended up being industrial compostable. So that's a really interesting case study of how you make a product that's of equal quality. And, we made sure that our solution was equally priced. So it's a really nice alternative. And hopefully we see that case take off in the future.
And the idea being, if we can just, as opposed to sort of recycle where we're going to use the stuff into more products, we compost it to just make dirt out of it, essentially.
Yeah. And I mean, I talk to industry friends all the time, and I think something really interesting is to think about what the package is, what is it containing, and does it make sense to recycle it or compost it? Like a coffee cup, coffee makes great compost.
Sure.
I mean, so, maybe it makes sense to compost coffee packaging. But maybe other materials that have more value in the recycle stream that would be better suited to design for recyclability.
So just like many, many things, there's not sort of a one size fits all or one stream. We got to be kind of creative in where it all goes. And you guys are looking to be sort of part of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of that solution. So talk to me a little bit about, you say you want to be part of the solution. Where are you in sort of being able to engage? Because it feels like, I've got so many questions on this point, but it feels like, right, you're sort of literally between two products, which must be like a difficult place to be to sort of help drive to an endpoint. So how do you guys engage to do that?
Yeah, we have a lot of really good partners. And so we're developing solutions together. We are working with people who are inventing new types of resins, new types of films, companies who work in metallizing, all different areas of the solution. And so together we're kind of partnering with customers and helping them to kind of navigate what the future of their package is.
And so I'm going to take a leap here and say that your customer has a customer that sells to the person who buys the product, right? Like, not to just making up a name. Like, if your stuff goes into a Frito-Lay package, you're selling to the people that make the packaging that would sell to somebody like Frito-Lay who sells to the person that eats the snack. Is that?
Yeah, our customers are the ones with the equipment and the packaging design teams that are developing the package to sell to a brand owner who sells to a customer. Yeah.
So everyone along that whole chain has to be interested in the sustainability aspect.
Yeah, and they are. I mean,
they are. That's what I was going to ask you. So tell us about that. Like, because you hear about it so much. Do you feel like is it lip service, going back to your comms days of like, these companies are saying, talking sustainability, but at the end of the day, we're not getting there? Or is there a real push in industry to come up with solutions?
There is a real push. I think that we're in the next 5 years, I think you'll start to see some really interesting things hitting the market. It has been slow, but we're really excited about what we're seeing being developed at every level of kind of the packaging market. And, I think it seems like consumers will be open to new interactions with packaging. I don't think it's realistic to expect that customers are going to abandon packaging. Like, we're so used to in our society opening up a bag along with our sandwich. Like, my kids eat food out of pouches. Like, it's part of our way of life. And it's actually, it's good at preventing food waste. It's good at keeping food fresh longer. There are benefits of packaging. And so I think hopefully the industry and consumers together can get comfortable with the new, solutions that are a bit more sustainable.
So making sure as we go through the sustainability thing, price can often play a role. Yeah. And consumers give a lot of lip service to stuff, but whether it's electronic vehicles or something else, they often don't want to pay the premium, or at least when they go to actually make the purchase and they look, it seems like they rarely want to pay more for sustainability.
Consumers certainly don't want to pay more. And, with inflation and everything, we're already all paying more day to day for everything. So there is a limit for how much, people and companies will pay for a sustainable alternative. So when we're, everyone is working to design something that's of equal quality, that feels somewhat familiar, true to the brand, and also, isn't gonna, blow the budget on the particular package. Yeah.
And from your work in the industry, from what you guys are seeing, and I'm obviously talking to your customers, and they probably hear from their customer, like, where are you seeing us in our ability to be able to generate something that can meet the barrier of entry, which is quality, and still be at a price point that people will pay?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting there. The cup example that I gave a little bit earlier, I mean, that was a really awesome example of like each component kind of delivering the quality and, meeting the So
that cup, the fully compostable cup, if to use the example, like if Starbucks was looking to buy those two cups, there's not really a cost difference between the compostable cup and the regular cup or whatever we would call it.
So that's an interesting question. I mean, from our perspective, our product costs the same as the applied cost is the same. It should not, take any more money to produce it from our perspective. It depends on, what resin they're moving to on the other side and how far that's come. Some of the more interesting up and coming bioresins, some of them are still in their infancy in terms of development and commercialization. So as that moves along, I would expect that it would be, more prevalent in terms of use. And hopefully you see costs come down and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really good to be a big part of it. And it does seem like that's a direction, that we've got to go. And it seems like it's a big part of what you guys have built kind of in your culture and are pushing internally as well, which is really great. What do you sort of see for the future of MICA generally? I mean, obviously sustainability is a big part. Like, what else are you guys breaking into? Like, so what's third generations in? Where are we going?
Yeah. So historically, we have always provided these water-based primers, which, have been between the layers of the package. But we're also getting into more functional layers of the package. So if you think about developing a more sustainable package, part of that is removing layers. And so once you start doing that, you have to rely on the functionality of other things. So we're providing coatings that provide adhesion to the base substrate and provide properties like oxygen barrier, grease barrier, heat sealability. So as you start to remove layers of the package, companies can rely more on our products to provide the functions that they would have used something else for. In a traditional package.
That's pretty cool.
And that's where we're going.
Yeah, taking the next level. So is that kind of in line with sort of the next evolution of what you guys are already producing?
Yeah. Yeah. So right now, we have an oxygen barrier coating that's out in the market. And we'll be, launching some more soon. But we have been working, we have a full R&D lab in Shelton, which is super cool. And so we're always kind of inventing the next product along with our customers to kind of solve their needs. And as new materials are being developed from the bioresin space and other interesting materials, we kind of look at those and see how they could enhance our products. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting future for sure.
Well, it is an interesting future. And are you finding that sort of your background from comm standpoint, your background in sales, and now sort of having been in all parts of the business, it's like put you in a really good spot to be sort of chief operating officer and thinking about how to bring to market new products, both what they are and how to communicate them?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm really grateful for the experience with our customers for so many years, and also, the ability to have worked with a lot of the teams and, different aspects of the business. It definitely helps in terms of change management if we ever have to, change anything, and also always, have the customer front and center when we're making decisions.
How do you like the new role?
I love it.
You do?
Yeah.
Big changes in the last 3 months?
Not too many big ones. But it's really, really cool. I mean, I'm working alongside my dad and my uncle who run the business now. I've spent a lot of time in sales, and it's kind of fun to kind of poke my head out of that world and also connect back into what's happening in our other areas of the company. So that's kind of where I'm at now. The first 6 months in the role, just kind of reacquainting myself with the current challenges that are happening across the board. And meanwhile, I always, am part of customer meetings and marketing meetings and things like that. So I get to do a lot more of what I find fun. And it should be good.
That is good. What's it like working with your dad and uncle on a daily basis?
We work well together. Yeah. I've heard stories of other family companies where the family doesn't get along or doesn't make decisions well together, but we defer to each other really well. And, it's fun coming to work every day.
Dude, you can't ask for a whole lot more than that.
Yeah.
Love what you're doing, have fun doing it, and like the people you're doing it with.
Exactly.
I mean, that's where it's all about. Mm-hmm. Something that I know we talked about a little bit, which I just wanted to bring up as we sort of get to the end, was I know you guys are really important to be involved in the community. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so important for businesses to be involved in the community and sort of not be aloof from it. Mm-hmm. I know it's really passionate. So I'd love for you to share with the audience, like what you guys do to be involved in the community. And
Yeah. When you say community, I'm thinking about our work, just in our local community around Shelton, and then also within the industry. So in Shelton area, we're on Earth Day, we've done all the cleanups and everything. And we also prioritize work around food insecurity. We're big in food packaging, so food insecurity feels like a natural kind of cause to work on. Thanksgiving, we've always donated turkeys to local families. This year, we did it through, we've worked with the Bridgeport Rescue Mission for many years, providing coats and turkeys. We've donated a turkey for every MICA employee for the past few years, or maybe as long as I've worked for MICA. So that feels good. And in our industry community, we've always been involved with industry associations. My family started a scholarship in honor of my grandfather that we'll actually be giving out this spring to a rising star in packaging or the paper industry, something tangential to what we do. And so, it's always been important for our family to kind of give back in the community and make sure that we're leaving the world and the industry a better place than we found it.
Something that just sort of came from family lineage, started with your grandfather, and has been carried on through.
Yeah. He really valued education. He was a big philanthropist. He had his personal causes that he really loved, and he passed that down through the family. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Carrying on that legacy is like super important. So that's great. Well, it's been really fun talking to you, Jaclyn. I'm going to ask you like a few closeout questions.
Sure.
You ready? If you had to do something, Jaclyn, other than be COO of the MICA Corporation, what would you spend your time doing? And it could be anything in the whole world.
That's a good one. Well, I have thought about this actually. So when I was a kid, I used to do musical theater, and I think that was like the best experience of my life. I probably would start like a theater of some sort. We have a great theater community in Connecticut. It's a crowded space, but something to do with theater probably.
Would you run it, or would you be on stage? Would you be front and center? An actor?
Definitely not front and center, but on stage and running the
operations.
The operation. Yeah.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah.
Do you happen to have a favorite business book or something that you like think about when you want to learn about business?
Yeah, I actually really love Hug Your Customers by Jack Mitchell. So you familiar with Mitchell's? Okay, so great clothing store in Westport, Connecticut, around the corner from where I live. This actually was at one point mandatory reading for MICA employees. And it's all about this philosophy of like hugging your customers in all sorts of ways, just showing them that you care and just exceeding expectations of your customers. And that's really how we try to operate as a business. So anytime, I kind of want to feel a little bit inspired in terms of how to freshen my thinking about caring for the customers, I kind of go back to that book. Actually thinking about making it mandatory reading again, do a little book club.
That's great.
But yeah, and I love that the story, the family, it's a family business. I love the story, and they're a great family business too.
Yeah, no, that's great. A lot of like crossover connections there.
Yeah.
Thinking about kind of like your career, what's something that you learned early in your life or early in your career that you think's helped propel you to all the success that you've had?
I think it's really been, for me, about relationships, and, who you hitch your wagon to really matters. I mean, think about a giant company like GE. Like, I found people who I felt like, really paved the way for me, placed me in amazing roles. And, you hear a lot about like, find people who will say nice things about you when you're not in the room. Like, I was really lucky and had those people when I was at GE. And I think I learned so much because of the experiences that I was given because of the relationships that I had.
Find people that will say nice things about you when you're not in the room. And remember that.
Yeah.
What's something that you learned later in your life or later in your career that if you could go back and tell young Jaclyn and she'd listen to you, you think it'd have a real positive impact on her?
Yeah, I think I would tell myself it's okay to not know the answer always. Surround yourself with people who kind of balance out your weak spots and kind of just be okay with not knowing the answer always.
Early on, did you feel like you had to know everything?
Yeah, I think I felt a lot of pressure to just always know everything about everything. And that's not possible. And just being comfortable saying, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great lesson that a lot of people should be able to take it with them. Jaclyn, thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome hearing your story and what you guys are doing at MICA.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by CompassMSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.